obviously Novelis is not as well known as KPMG, so I think it's best to give you a short introduction, very short, on who we are. So we call ourselves business process efficiency experts. Why is that? Because everything we do is aimed at business process efficiency. So we work in the area of process intelligence, we do intelligent automation, we also do software development and smart architectures, meaning we really have our hands in the code and in information systems. We know how to build them, and that knowledge is extremely important for everything else we do. We also work in the area of, I think like everyone, AI, but we focus on Gen AI. And one topic which is extremely important for all of us in technology anyways is security. So just to give a very high view on what we do. What differentiates us from others is the fact that we have an internal research and development lab that is focused on AI. And we spend more than 25% of our revenue really in that lab, which means we really know what we're talking about, and we have a passion for it. Maybe 2 sentences about me to understand why I'm here and why I'm super passionate about business process efficiency. Before starting with Novelis, or starting Novelis in the DACH and Nordics, I was working for large enterprises such as ABBYY and Siemens Energy. So if it is about long processes not working, things take too much time, too many people being involved, nothing really going fast, but then I know what I'm doing. So in those companies, I was responsible mainly for digital transformation initiatives, meaning I also understand why things sometimes just take longer to transform. So, but the topic for today, and I'm here again, related to business process efficiency, is process intelligence with ABBYY timeline. As Jens said earlier, ABBYY is a real great company when it comes to technology. Sometimes it's more, okay, how can we implement that kind of technology in organizations? So, who of you is familiar with process intelligence / process mining? Maybe some of you are using it already. Okay. Majority, yeah, some yes, some no. So I try to keep this short as well. 50-50 it seems. What is process intelligence? It starts from one basic fact. Data doesn't lie. Data doesn't have a bias. And if I want to look at processes, I need something that I can rely on. If you think back a couple of years, we would call in consultants and they would come in and sit with you, discuss, and end up putting sticky notes everywhere, and everyone would tell you, okay, yeah, but I do the process here, it starts here, and it ends here. And the next person says, no, it starts here and it ends there. And you just basically end up with an idea of a process. Then process blue books would be developed, or guidelines, or whatever, and the reality is still a completely different one. And that's why the baseline for process intelligence really is the data. And that's where it starts. Then what we can do when we have the data, we discover the process, the reality of it. Where does it work? Which direction does it go? How many parties are involved? Where does it take longer than it should? Where does it deviate? Where is it pulled back? And all of that we can visualize in ABBYY timeline in a super simple way. And important again for business users, not for the technicians, not for the automation COE or anyone else. It's really for business users, meaning process owners and SME. Next step, very interesting, is as soon as I know what I'm looking at, as soon as I know what the process is like in reality across multiple systems, I can analyze them. So I can identify the bottlenecks, inefficiencies, delays, and as soon as I have identified those, I can actually go into those delays or inefficiencies and look at them closer. Meaning I can investigate on exactly why is it, or why is it always like going back. And for that, I'll come to it on the next slide because there's a prerequisite to make that very powerful. But the analysis and the powerful thing about timeline is I can actually, based on historical data that I ingested, I can predict deviations from a process what happens. Because the AI behind it can, I forgot the word, calculate the likelihood of this process when it comes through those many process steps to be deviation. And I can act before that happens, because I can set up based on that deviation and alert. And this also leads to the potential for optimization, which is on the one hand optimization by itself, because I can get that alert that it will deviate before it happens. But on top, I can simulate process changes. So again, I've got almost post-its, and I take this post-it from here and I put it here because I thought this would speed up the process or would bring me any kind of gain. And then I need to do it, and I implement it, and I have people changing their ways of working, and I invest in technology or in automation. And then I find out, oops, that wasn't really what I was hoping for. And with timeline, I can actually simulate that in advance before I do any investment. I can try it out, and I can run it through the system, and the system will tell me, okay, this is the impact, which is like a huge step in comparison to where we were a couple of years ago. And as I mentioned already, the monitoring and alerting is also happening at the same time. So that helps me, again, I set up certain SLAs. Everyone knows it, what's monitoring, what's control. It helps me with risks, with regulations, with compliance, with all of that, which is expected nowadays, I'd say, of technology to support us in that. Any questions so far? All right. Was it fast? Was it? No? Okay, now we know the technology is great. We have the tools. Yay. Now I have different companies, large enterprises, smaller enterprises. How can I actually make it work with those companies and for those companies, for the teams? So there are certain challenges, especially when it comes to process intelligence and getting all those insights so that I can improve my processes. Our main, again, as said at the beginning, is the data. The quality of the data is unstructured data, structured data, multiple systems, millions of sources. Some companies have a data lake, others don't. I need to transform all of that so it can be used by the tool. And on top of that, besides all the multiple systems, I also have multiple organizations. Because what do we look at if we look at processes? Do we look at end-to-end processes, or do we look at small processes like we just heard from Jens with the invoicing process? I mean, if you think about the whole process, it's me first ordering something, then I get it delivered, and then I pay my invoice. So do I look at the invoice part that we just looked at before, or do I look at the end-to-end process? How many departments are in there? How many subject matter experts are in there? How many systems are involved? And that's where. So what do you need to overcome that? Obviously, you need expertise in data, so that you can use things like ETLs to bring the data into a format that it helps. But when I look at data, I look at attributes, right? So is it a time because it's delayed? Is it a PO number like we had earlier? Maybe you can come up with other examples. But those kind of attributes I need to think about before if I look at the process. So I've defined the process. We only look at the invoicing process. I need the PO. I need the date. I need all of this in order to then really make sense out of the data that I get. And as usual, if I roll out anything new, you need the ambassadors in the organization. And you need to make sure that you have the right people at the table. So what we are currently seeing, and I will come to that on the same slide, so don't worry, the stakeholder management is that we often speak to Center of Excellence for Automation. But process intelligence can be at home in the Center of Automation, but it could also be managed by the analytics team in an organization. Because maybe they already have a business analytics or reporting or performance measurement or whatever organization where it would be way more useful to them because they're already familiar with many of the processes. And then you obviously need the process owners and the subject matter experts, at least at the beginning. And what you want to achieve is that they use it, that they become their own process intelligence experts to see, okay, this is how I can use the tool, this is how I can apply or similar changes before I do anything. That's great, let me improve. my field of activity. And this is why it's very different from organization to organization. Yes, process intelligence, and that's one point that I forgot to mention, helps you to identify automation opportunities. Super fast. Okay, it tells you, okay, here you can automate something. But I mean, automation, we all know, and this afternoon, I'm sorry to miss it, is going to be a very nice conversation, panel discussion about RPA is that. So in a sense, automation. And nevertheless, timeline helps you to see, okay, this can be automated. And it helps you then to calculate what would this automation bring. Solution, again, definition of objectives. So what do I try to achieve? Do I try to achieve the improvement of the invoicing process or the entire end-to-end process? Am I trying to improve? Maybe you guys can come up with another example from another field, which is always accounting, which is, everyone knows it, and so actually so much in order, it's easy to understand. Maybe in, I don't know, in innovation or in development of products, if you think about it. So I'm working on a machine, I develop a specific screw, and actually my production team already has a similar screw and I don't know it, whatever. I mean, I can think of any kind of process that we do, because at the end of the day, everything we do is sort of a process. It's just not mapped as a process, and this is where BI helps, that's one. And the last point of it is about building, let's say, a team that you could call a center of excellence for process intelligence, no matter where it belongs to. If it's in the automation area, if it's in the analytics area, if someone else in business or transformation or under the board members, takes responsibility, is you need to convince somehow everyone, because it is something for everyone. How do you do that? You prove value super fast. And that's another thing with timeline. What we've seen with customers, if we implement them, we start small. We had it earlier as well. Jens mentioned it. How does he do it with customers? So we slice the elephant. We start with a proof of value. Proof of value can be delivered within 7 weeks. Define on an objective, what do I want to achieve, looking at a specific process, so that I can get the right attributes and measure and look at the process and analyze the process according to those attributes. And obviously another problem usually is scalability, but again, that's pretty technical that you can do. Scalability on the technical side, scalability when it comes to organization. You need to have the right network. You need to be somehow well connected in your organization, so you convince more and more and more stakeholders. So you build use cases for them. And this is why kind of the center of excellence approach, as far as we see, works really well. Because the internal people become the ambassadors, and they kind of also know where the company is in pain. And obviously, we, like from a service company perspective, we also develop software, but we're speaking about services today. Our aim is really to make our customers autonomous and trusted. Because as I said, this ambassadorship needs to come from the inside. It cannot come from an outside agency. We can support and we pair up and we partner until we say, and we have things like maturity matrices and whatnot, so that the teams inside the customer can actually evaluate themselves and see how comfortable they feel and how fast they have, let's say, gone down the road of autonomy and then hand it over. But without that, it wouldn't work long term. So what's the impact? I mean, somehow I've mentioned it here and there, and it's kind of obvious because everyone knows what process improvement means. So I have impacts on different levels. Obviously, as said, I can identify automation opportunities, speed up reporting and planning, and I can redesign my processes. And what we've seen so far, and it's actually a key figure, is that we can reduce cycle times by 30%. I'm going to give you one real-life example, even though it's a dry topic, it's insurance. This is a customer of ours, again, quite funny because we had an insurance company earlier as well as a use case example. We worked with them and the right people. We delivered the project in 7 weeks, as mentioned, and the return on invest for the entire project, including automation. I need to add that here, the figures are achieved also by automating 3 of the many steps of an underwriting process, so the subscription of an insurance with this company. Where did we start? The company didn't have any idea really what the process looked like. It was also across multiple call centers. It was across multiple countries. They were kind of, okay, we know how the process should work, but we don't know at all if it works like that or not. So we implemented PI and we looked at it, identified 3 key steps, or let's say bottleneck steps that we could automate, where we implemented RPA, and we achieved cost in operating by 12%. We did not reduce headcount. And because we didn't reduce headcount, and we said, okay, they don't, it's not, for them, it's not about losing the people, it's more about figuring out, like, why it's not going wrong. We also figured out that the people were not well enough educated on taking decisions on which direction should this request for a subscription actually go. Because there are so many policies, and there are so many different ways of applying it, and it depends again on your age, on your, hopefully not, gender, and so forth, that they struggled. And then subscription requests would just hang there and wouldn't be processed. Where, again, we saw earlier, AI can help. But we figured, okay, here, we just train them better. And that showed an impact. So impact of PI is not only in the automation or in the technology, but also on the people. We reduced the processing time by 90% and increased the revenue by 15%, because with the same amount of people, they could process 50% more subscriptions in the same time frame. So you have another element, you can grow revenue just by process efficiency. And that's, I think, everything I can tell you about this example, because more I'm not allowed to talk about. And I need to say that this was at the beginning, so we measured at the beginning of the project. We did it last year, a year and a half ago, approximately, already. And obviously it's been ongoing, which is another question I often face. Yeah, well, but what if I've made my process great, No, it's super efficient, it doesn't cost me anything. Why should I continue looking into my processes? Because the environment in which processes happen will always change. We had the demographic change. There will be changes in humans. We have application change. So there will be another application coming in with not really foreseeing impact on the process. Because yeah, we always think, okay, just change the tool. And we'll do the exact same thing as it did before. And then we find out, oh no, actually didn't. And I think we all know those kinds of problems. And that's why it is an ongoing initiative. And yes, the first step to scale and to help your organizations is by finding more stakeholders to work with and help them with the processes. But you need to continue monitoring what is happening. And this is where PI can help. So I did not show you the tool. I only spoke about the services. For those who don't know it and want to find out more about specific features, I gave you a QR code in case you want to scan it. In addition, I know that there's a new release coming in 3 weeks, I think, with even more things. So look out for that in case you're interested. And that's actually from my side. So there weren't many questions earlier. I asked in between no questions either. And I just saw very best at time. So I thought everyone who can come up with a question, it's very best. How about Anything? No? You. I know you will come.
So I have a couple of questions,
A couple?
Couple.
Okay, I can come best.
I have a couple of questions. We were talking from the beginning about some definition, like process mining, process discovery, task mining. Can you tell us what is the difference, or all of these are the same?
No. So how we define it, it's pretty simple. At the top, you have process intelligence. Intelligence, think of spies and that kind of intelligence. Then we have within process intelligence, which incorporates the whole field. of analyzing processes and finding out things about processes, inspiring more processes. You have process mining, where you obviously look at things like events, timestamps, and the global picture. What is happening when, with what, by who, kind of. And then you have task mining, which is at a level deeper, where you kind of, for me, and please, if someone is more experienced than me, then challenge me. You kind of record what a human is doing across multiple platforms, which is also a process, right? So it's an interaction here, it's an interaction. You record that. It's basically a principle that more comes from RPA implementation than necessarily from PI. And the reason why we always, when we speak about process intelligence, combine the two is because it is combined. It can be combined, it should be combined, because it's a different level of granularity that you can look at. Because you have applications doing things and you have humans doing things. And so you look at the desktop interaction versus, let's say, application interaction. Did I miss something? Any experts here, please?
Good. So, as automation expert, I'm pretty sure that you had some customers who started some automation projects without proper discovery phase. Or maybe somebody who thought that, oh, like we really know the processes, but when they start to automatize some stuff, oh, they said, oh, like it is like 100 of exceptions, and yeah. So can you tell a little bit of this experience?
Well, I think you summarized it already by saying, okay, let's go back a couple of years again, just because Supplement RPA really was implemented everywhere. The heavy lift is like, oh God, it's rule-based, right? It's not like KI or AI where we just discussed, where it's like smart and it can adapt. No, I have to have rules. I need to hard code it. I need to tell it exactly what it needs to do. And then you do it and your process fail and fail and fail and fail. Your automation simply fails. And by failing, you find out, okay, no, there's an exception and another exception, and there's another exception and another exception. And this is, I think, why everyone understands that processes in our heads diverge enormously from the reality of processes. And where, honestly, we've never faced any customer who, when we speak to them about process intelligence, doesn't say, oh, yes, like, this would make so much sense. Therefore, the challenges are not really selling the concept or understanding how valuable it is. It's more in the implementation of the rest.
Okay, so it drives me to another question, because like many of us, also from customer side, are talking to stakeholders. Yeah, so many of us talking to stakeholders, we need to convenience, like why, like this solution or that solution is wrong. And maybe talking about process intelligence, it is not something that me as the customer can benefit exactly from this solution. So mostly I'm benefiting like what I'm using with the knowledge I got from this solution. Yeah, so is there any like hints, advice, like how to talk to stakeholders, what is really advantage of implementing such solution?
So I'm not sure I got the question right, to be honest. So are you aiming at the technological part of it, or how do I convince my stakeholders in my organization about needing process intelligence? Because the second point you already answered before, saying it's, or you answered, and saying it's the value and the knowledge that you get out of it. So that's another way of not making
no, the question was, okay, we're taking, for example, invoice processing solution. And for customer, for stakeholders, it is quite easy to understand what is the result. Like we implemented these things, we made such that this way, now we're doing another way, and we're getting like some benefits.
Yeah.
Talking about process intelligence, when stakeholders ask, okay, what we will get out of implementing these things?
That's what I said earlier with the efficiency. You know? It's like, what do you get out of it? You get, in order to, like process intelligence, you need process intelligence to improve your process. And the result of that, meaning the value you get, is a way more efficient process, which means, again, impact in time saved, operating costs saved, maybe in this case more revenue. You can have a higher customer satisfaction because you can improve interaction with the customer because you figure out that's where it's not working. So you have, in a way, all of the impact that you would find with automation plus more knowledge. It's for me, it's always important what do we humans get out of it and what do I as a company get as a maybe not so necessarily tangible value, but it is of high value if I know how to interact better with my customers. And I know it takes me 3 months to process a request because it wasn't figured out properly or just ended up somewhere in the GBS, in the service desk, somewhere it just comes like. And therefore you have tangible impact, but you also have non-tangible impact.
Good. I have a couple more questions, but I'm not sure that I will manage this time. Yeah, so talking about process intelligent implementation, is it like one-time project? For example, like I want to understand how my AP process works. I applied it, it showed me something, and I forget about process intelligence. Or is it something that I can benefit also after implementation, some automation tools, RPA, IDP solution? Yeah.
Well, thank you for asking that question because that's what I was trying to explain earlier when I said the environment in which processes happen changes. And therefore, it's not a one-time initiative. It is a recurring initiative. You should be looking at it again and again and again. The environment is changing in which your process happens on technical side applications as well as with humans, as well with objectives of certain processes.
Okay, I'm talking about ABBYY timeline. I'm from ABBYY, but I'm not a huge expert in ABBYY timeline. I believe you are better than me. Does ABBYY timeline offer some tools to monitor what is going on after implementation or during implementation?
Yes, it does. Very clear answer.
Okay.
And it depends on what you want to look at. Again,
yeah.
Yes, you can choose a process, and then you monitor that process. But maybe you might want to look at a specific attribute in this process. So, okay, how often is the PO number missing, for example? Or how often does it get stuck at milestone 2? So it doesn't even get processed by the OCR or something, to figure out why. Why didn't it actually end up in the scan machine? And this is the kind of monitoring setup. So again, it depends on what you want to look at, but you can set up monitoring however you like, you can customize it. And a very super easy way, that's what I also said earlier, every timeline is like aimed at business users. So that we who know how to interact with normal web interfaces can also use it. And that's key.
Yeah. Sorry for challenging you with another. When I was on ABBYY website, I saw some words about prediction, talking about timeline. What is that? Like, system can predict something, or like?
Based on historical data, the system using algorithm can predict when a process will most likely deviate or will most likely do something. So again, it's what you define. So if you want to kind of predict it's not scanned or whatever, then you can set it up in that way that it looks out for that. But yes, it can. And it will then notify you that, hey, this most likely is going to watch out because of the data. Again, it depends on the data I gave us.
Okay, so talking like about invoice processing, for example, my company is always mixed in terms of payments invoice for one specific vendor.
Yeah.
So system will know about this and will notify, for example, invoice came from that vendor, like, oh, you should be worried because like last 20 times you missed your payment terms or something like that. Okay, and maybe last question from my side, since you're ABBYY partner and ABBYY expert for this one. So what is the role of consulting services? Because we understand it is great technology, great platform, but what is the role of consulting services and industry experts in implementing and success of process intelligence? It is my last question.
Okay, great. It's two elements. It's again the heavy lift. 75% of the work for implementing a PA project is the data. So you need to have expertise in that, and you need to know where to get the data from, because most often, even let's say our customers don't know where their data is for this process. So you need to be persistent. You need to, get them to speak to their colleagues and figure out in which system is it, and then it's in the system A, and then okay, but the rest of the data for this process is actually in system B, because we don't have a data lake. Other times it's easier because you have a data lake, but you need to make sure that you get all the attributes, that those attributes are actually existing somewhere in your systems, if you want to look at those specific ones, because you have set yourself a specific objective. And that's why following this, okay, we need a fast proof of value. That's always key to define the objective. What I want to achieve, so that I can take this value proof to my other stakeholders. And that's where the second challenge is. And this is where we support organizations with that, what we call building of a center of excellence for process intelligence. No matter where in the organization it hangs or who are the people. You don't try to build new roles. It's not new roles. Anyone who is kind of familiar with the topics of automation or performance measurement or whatever can be upskilled. And this is where the service comes in, because we run in tandem to make them independent super fast as possible.
I can maybe add something to that. I mean, because we work very closely together, and the basis for our cooperation, ABBYY and Novelis, on this topic is basically built upon that we as ABBYY deliver the technology, and Novelis is capable of delivering the services to overcome some very huge, important challenges at the very beginning when you start such a project. And the biggest challenge we always face when we start discussions with customers about process intelligence is the data. Where do I get it from? How do I get it? How do I structure it to be able to analyze it in a tool like Timeline? And that's where Novelis is basically helping us with their human resources to overcome those challenges. We as ABBYY deliver only the technology, but don't have the human resources to get started with our customers. So thanks for that.
I think one of the problems is also that the customers usually, they know their data, but they often didn't have to deal with the change logs yet in this detail. And this is what you need basically to set up a timeline, because there are all the timestamps when changes have actually been made to data entries. And I think this is one point where they often need help interpreting change logs and implementing it.
There was a question where you get a gummy bear.
That's actually the only reason why I raised my hand.
I think you were next, right? I don't.
You choose. This one. Okay, as the gummy bears are already there. So, so I have a question. So from the perspective of, let's say, consultants, or also, as you said, like automation COEs are often your first point of contact still, because this is like their space basically now. So what would you recommend how to start with this topic? Is the process intelligence, is Timeline or whatever tool you're using, is it your secret weapon that you have in the background that you try to utilize whenever possible, and then just bring up in the end, like, this is where all my insights come from? Or are you going directly to the business department? Because I assume that having like 70% of the work is like, where do I get my data from? Is it clean? How is it structured? Then if I go directly to the business, there will be maybe another 50 or even more percent then like overcoming my budget also that I have with change management. So how do I use it? How do I look at it? Why is it valuable? So what would you recommend to an, let's say, automation COE in terms of how to start? Keep it to yourself and use the knowledge you have because you know it will be valuable, or try to distribute it and then see how it's accepted?
I would make it dependent on the organization working and the size of the organization. If we take an example of a COE not having, like automation not having their own budget, but being funded by budget optimization, you need the business. You need buy-in. If you have your own budget and you can do whatever you want, you just need to prove the value afterwards. You don't need to. But nevertheless, it is, again, aimed at this, just making business processes more efficient. Right? And you need the subject matter experts. You need the buy-in, the process. And if it's not the right process, on another process. And maybe they're even willing to, fund a bit or to also for the analysis to make sense out of the data.
Okay, so this was basically also for this use case. This is the approach, then like bring up all the stakeholders and try to get the value out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Akash from Infineon. So here for us, we are already using the process mining, let's say for almost now 3 years.
Yeah.
But for us, right, in a management, what comes into the question is that after 2 years, now we have stopped all the diversion, like all these exceptions and so on, which were happening. But then how to get then the value? Right now, yes, you get return on investment and so on. But after 2 years, then we are really questioning that, hey, we are investing so much, but now we are not getting that business intelligence.
Yeah.
Because we are into like semiconductors and all, right? So our processes are not changing any drastically or something over the time.
Over the time. Again, I mean, it's a question of scaling. Have you talked to everyone who has a process that could be made more efficient? If you are at that stage of maturity with all your processes, I take my hat and chapeau, because that's amazing. And then it's again what was just asked about, the monitoring. Because yes, we say our processes don't change majorly, but they do. And there are key processes that I would always want to monitor. And there are others that I've done it once, it's improved, it works. But are you sure it still works?
Yeah, exactly. So there we are into now. So we are continuing, of course, with the process mining. But for us now, the thing is like more with that subscription or something that maybe companies like ABBYY and other competitors and all, they need to think in the market that once you reach maturity, maybe the subscription cost and all has to come down, because then you don't give ROI. Ventas, you continuously give ROI because I'm continuously able to save my cost. But here, like once I have reached maturity, I'm not saving the cost as much which I was saving in the first year of the implementation.
But therefore, you have also the monitoring function in every timeline. You can always keep monitoring what you are doing, and you can also use the predictions that are now available also to continuously look for changes, improvements, and where you can receive in the future additional ROI or new ROI or whatever. So business monitoring or process simulation helps basically to figure out where future changes can be implemented and if they make sense or not.
I think the question was more that
how to get, because even if I buy the tool for the 3 years, right? So now on the 3rd year also, I am basically paying the same as first year, but now I'm not getting the ROI which I was getting in the first year.
So what we're seeing customers that reach that level of maturity now starting to do is definitely moving to leveraging, I would say, process intelligence for compliance and operational excellence, really. That's what we want to aim at. I guess that's what you guys are definitely.
So that's why we are continuing, but now the ROI. So like with Ventas, you continuously get the ROI.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's basically replacing rather than having people, you do the automation. Now here, like once you have stopped all this deviation from happening, right? Because like here also we use IT processes to stop like that people cannot deviate. We stop that things.
Yeah.
And now like how to get then on the, let's say this 12% improvement or something year-on-year basis.
Yeah, I would definitely say if you've been able to fully automate that process and stop all deviations, the ROI that you're going to get for that process will go down, except for the part that is, of course, the compliance part. You want to ensure that what you say continues to be true. They cannot deviate. Nobody's found the loophole. And if they do, you want to know about that. That's also the predictiveness and the monitoring that allows you to do that operational excellence. Now, I do think that in every organization, there will always be new processes. There will always be new steps. And that's where I think the continuous ROI, definitely combining that with the capabilities when it comes to operational excellence, looking at new processes and being able to, from the start, discover how those are supposed to work and actually visualize, even if you do start from scratch, that you're getting the wanted outcome. You can do that with timeline. And then another thing, just to get you thinking about it, is you touched on generative AI just a little bit before. We're going to talk about it more this afternoon. There's more and more legislation and compliance that is going to come into effect on this particular topic. And one of the things that we've already played around with and tested with is to see how can timeline help in actually providing you the insights into your compliance as an organization when it comes to everything that you do that is powered by AI. And that even includes Vantage, that includes Timeline itself. So we already know that definitely Timeline is going to be able to assist and help with offering you the insights and perhaps even the regulatory compliance, data or reports that you will have to provide to customers, to registrations and legislation. So there's more ROI that I think at a face value that you can definitely get from Timeline. Thanks. You're welcome.
I wanted to ask about a topic that you talked really briefly at the beginning about the RPA and the involvement. Right, currently, especially we in the financial services, we have the push from management to prove the value so they can see a percentage above 10% of process improvement. That's what happens from all the insurance and financial services I know. Most of us, they go and they're like, let's implement a UiPath robot. They show it to them, it will look good. And then it's like, you ended up having robots like clone like no other. Like in my organization, I have about 65 robots running around. How do you see that from your experience going into the future? Can we, because we tend to really, as soon as we found something that's something fancy, we tend to take it and spread it around. And I had this question before. It was like, they told me, Nick, be careful how many robots get implemented. Because I think I wanted to get your view here. And that would be great to hear from someone who has seen a lot in the industry.
So can you repeat your question exactly again? So is it about the number of robots? Is it
No, it's more about
value of robots, or
it's more about a lot of us in the industry, we're putting a lot into the RPA right now to get like the process improvement and really showcase to management that, hey, we have done something.
That's the first.
Yes.
Simple answer. Because as said earlier, you can prove the value before you implement it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get a budget that is tailored, so you will not have discussions about, oh my God, this is like, okay, it probably depends on. No, but even then, implementation will be much more accurate because you know which process steps and which rules to tell your robot to do, because you've improved the process before.
Yeah.
So it's not about finding that out on the way of implementing it.
But do you think I should use that knowledge that I have to start building on process intelligence as I go already? So that's more like, so I can use the RPA that I have, so I can design the road towards the process intelligence to bring them to a more mature stage. Because now I did the discovery, I put the robots, then I have to keep going. Even though I don't have OCR, it's good yet. So that's why I'm here. But the timeline will be able to help me to also monitor what I have, right? We'll have an integration to review what the process look like across the systems. Am I right?
Yeah.
Because I have many systems.
Exactly. So you need to analyze your processes first before you implement any robots. I mean, we have another bigger cooperation with a robots provider who is using ABBYY Timeline, but the bit task mining out of ABBYY Timeline to really analyze where they should implement robots and which tasks robots should take over, basically. It's analyzing the process in general first, then analyzing the tasks within this process to find out which tasks are easy to automate, which tasks can be taken over by a robot, and implement the robots exactly there where they are needed and not vice versa.
Let me also add, I'm an IDP expert, so I'm not a process mining guy, but honestly, technologically, I understand the most challenging is get the data in, and it's data from all the systems. You just need to be able, this is not easy, to connect it, to put it in one big source that it makes sense. It needs to be connected if it's one process. Sometimes it's not so easy. If the order number is an SAP, and your milk production doesn't know about this order number, just the employee knows it, then there's an issue. You cannot connect the data, but this needs then to be fixed. But just to explain, also for IDP projects, would make sense to start with process mining. If you talk about invoices, it's obvious. You can easily see what you can save, but how many documents in all the companies you have, you don't know, is it worth to do or not? I have many clients with very small use cases, and just looking on a process and look on the cost, if it's one employee doing this, this is the maximum cost you can save. So using an IDP solution for something a student is doing for 450 euros a month, yeah, this is your absolute maximum to save. So it makes probably no sense. While you have probably other documents, we heard about client just needs 2 fields from invoices. If it's much invoices, just 2 fields, maybe it's a very easy, good case for an IDP solution because those 2 fields can be extracted probably out of the box already. So I would recommend always to do really process mining analysis before and also afterwards to monitor the system. Usually you monitor our IDP solution, but maybe this is not all you want to know. Maybe you want to see it from beginning to end, so the end-to-end process, including the ERP solution and everything. But this is also for us not so easy because it's completely different people. When we talk to the IDP people, I usually talk to, sometimes it's just IT guys who want to automate something. You need the process owner of the full process to talk about this because I know, I don't tell the names, they process invoices, 10 million invoices a year. They don't want to know anything about SAP because then they would have more to do. It's the person above them, the full process owner. He is interested in everything, in SAP and in Flexi Capture solution.
Yeah, our C class, that's what they want to hear.
Yeah,
Like, we implement
exactly.
it now. It cost me that amount of money for this year, for this number of pages. What did you got out? So, and let's say if I implement ABBYY in 1 or 2, the first, second, and third year, I have to match to a business case.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest trick that I have. That's my biggest challenge. And it's like, how do I measure it?
But when you can prove the value before already, before implementing, and honestly, you're not limited to ABBYY products. So you can put whatever you want into the, yeah, if you use timeline, it's an ABBYY product, but you can even use other IDP solution. I would not recommend, but you can also use APR solutions.
What of course can be challenging is saying like, what will be the improvement before I implement ABBYY timeline, for example, because it depends on what comes out, you know? So this can be challenging. Like, how do you prove before you actually get the budget to implement something like ABBYY timeline to what you will
Yes,
say?
sure, but you can first have a look at it. Is it worth to do it?
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
to identify where it might make sense. If you see there's people, I don't know, spending hours and hours of putting in data. For example, just one case, it's core documents, certificate of analysis. Probably many of you know, but my feeling is no company knows where all those documents are. They don't know the full amount of core documents in their company. After years, they know, but something in the beginning, they are not aware.
I know, but for a lot of other technologies like IDP, like RPA, you can kind of calculate a business case beforehand, but I find for timeline and process mining in general, it can be very hard to say beforehand what is the business case behind it, because it depends on what the outcome is. No? It's like the secondary effects of the process mining that then cause the actual savings, not the process mining itself.
Yeah, but process mining is trying to help you to identify the right space, so it's difficult to agree. Yeah.
Touching that more in how do I decide if I want to invest time and money in process mining or not. Therefore, we carry out pilot projects for a certain amount of time. It can be 3 months, it can be 6 months, depending on how big a company is. So you just pilot first before you decide if you want to roll it out or not. That's how many or most of the projects start, basically. Yeah, with a proof of concept for process mining. Sorry, yes.
I think especially in the case that you're mentioning with, and it's a pretty good terminology of saying I have 65 robots running around, because often what we see is this is what they are doing. And we've been talking also a lot with huge customers of ours that have been that have the continuous pressure to prove the value. Like, are you still generating what you cost me? And the thing is that I think what process mining gives you as a chance here is basically you are connecting the tiny bit that RPA has automated, or even a big bit, to the bigger picture. And what is often like missed in terms of measuring KPIs is like, okay, now this employee doesn't have to type the value anymore into the system. 5 minutes of savings, 1,000 transactions. But what impact does it have on like like downstream, basically the next 5 steps, the next 5 employees. How are you measuring that? And this is where I think process mining comes in, like showing you, as we already heard, like this end-to-end picture, giving you the chance to just go there and like, okay, you need 20% more revenue of your team. You look at this and you say, ah, there they are. You don't even have to automate because you already automated this bit, or you sped it up at least maybe. So it gives you a bigger picture, and then also more potential for new automations, for other technologies whatsoever. So your way of talking and like the diversity of KPIs and processes that you're measuring for return on investment, way bigger. So this is where then the value comes if you don't start with it, but you start it like somewhere else. The journey will always end up somewhere. Every tool, everything is like contributing what it can to this.
May I ask which robots you use? UiPath?
Yeah, that's what we use.
Okay.
Well, because of compliance, as because that's the, how to say, I think because of the monitoring and the trail and the rails and the trail behind them. So every time they execute something, so it makes it easier for us if something goes bad to trace it. But there is big discussions now to kind of like adapt things on Microsoft Azure and use the AI builder for some things, but I haven't got any compliance clearance for that yet. So in my case, yes, because in financial services, we have to deal with bluffing and MA risk. So we have, I mean, for Germany, even though Germany is not our biggest kind of area where we make money, but you have also in other European countries similar rules, like in the Nordic countries. And that's why we use UiPath mainly. Because we prove the concept at Siemens, and that's what we use.
It doesn't really matter for our technology. So it's with the other bigger competition of UiPath would have been much easier to get you connected to the right people. But again, with UiPath, the direction you need to go is basically task mining to identify how many robots you need, where they should be implemented, which task they should take on, and so on. These questions can be answered with task mining.